Hey guys, this is Jack Lockjaw. I want to start out by apologizing for the lack of videos recently. I got really sick for a while, and I lost my voice. It's back for the most part, but not at 100%. Still, I've been playing and recording, and I have material to keep making videos. Today, I'm going to give a spoiler-free review of the Atlas JRPG Persona 5. This was easily my most anticipated game over the last few years. I loved Persona 4, which I discovered far after its original release when it was brought onto the PlayStation Vita as Persona 4 Golden. I've since gone back and played Persona 3, which is also quite good, but few games do I look back on with such fondness as I do Persona 4 Golden. It has taken a while for Persona 5 to release in the West. Originally, it was slated to be a simultaneous release in the East and the West in December 2015. But it was pushed back several times, and then it saw a release in Japan in September 2016. Spoiler-wise, this was a nightmare. I curated my feeds for months to weed out any and all possible information on Persona 5. I saw the teaser and the first trailer in Japanese, and I avoided everything else. If you're like me in that regard, chances are you probably already picked up the game. For everyone else, fear not. This game's story will not be spoiled in this review. I will show gameplay footage, which will feature the images of characters and names, but no crucial story elements will be featured. The characters I do show will primarily be the ones that have already been depicted in promotional materials. Any dialogue that I feel remotely spoils anything, I will blur out, and everything will be shown out of context in the event that anything in the late game is shown. Without further ado, let's get right to it. One of the main questions I get from friends that aren't sure if they should pick up the game is, do I need to play the other Persona games to understand this one? The short answer is no. They operate much like the Final Fantasy games, in that they're related thematically and contain Easter eggs, but the plot of one is not connected to the plot of another. For anyone not in the know, Persona games are a mixture of turn-based dungeon crawling RPGs and visual novels. What these games do well is that both the RPG dungeons and the novel portions of the game come together to serve the growth of the player character and your party. The majority of days in the year are played out where you can do two activities, one during the day and one in the evening. You can decide to go into the current story dungeon, or palace as they call them, which will consume the whole day. Or you can opt to do any number of various activities that will improve your character's personality attributes. You can read a book, go fishing, watch a movie, work a part-time job, take the Big Bang Burger Challenge. Any of these activities will increase your knowledge, charm, kindness, guts, and proficiency. You need to increase these because it will unlock some opportunities to hang out with the game's supporting characters. When you spend time with someone, you have a chance to learn more about the character and increase their social connection. The game refers to these characters as confidants. Building relationships with confidants is at the core of Persona's gameplay. This will unlock new moves for each of your characters during combat, such as the ability to heal a teammate's status ailment, or even to absorb an otherwise fatal blow to your character. For non-teammate confidants, you will still unlock abilities. Occasionally this will also be related to combat, such as the ability to begin the battle with a hail of gunfire. Sometimes, like in the case of the Temperance confidant, you unlock abilities that will allow your days to become more efficient. On the RPG side of the game, you are given an area to explore filled with enemies, treasure, and mini-bosses. Each storyline palace has a time limit by which you must complete it or the game will be over. The game never lets you forget about this time limit. You generally won't be able to complete the dungeon in one go. This can be due to storyline obstructions that require you to complete another task, or because your characters are running out of SP. SP is essentially the magic or ability points in this game. Items that recover SP are valuable and rare, so after fighting enough battles, you will need to go back out and recover, which will advance the day. Enemies in the dungeons have some kind of weakness that you can exploit. You have to experiment to find out which enemies are weak to what element. When you hit an enemy's weakness, you will down the enemy and are awarded with an extra turn. However, if an enemy hits your weakness, they also get an extra turn, so you have to be mindful of your team's weaknesses. If you down all of the enemies, you'll enter a hold-up, where your team surrounds the enemies at gunpoint. Here, you can release a high-damaging, all-out attack that is generally powerful enough to end the battles, and you get a stylish animation based on which character initiated the hold-up. You can also negotiate with the enemy. Here you can demand that the enemy gives you money or an item. You can also enter a dialogue where you try to convince the enemy to join your team as a new persona. The persona you have equipped will dictate the main character's abilities, strengths, and weaknesses. It's possible to switch between them in mid-battle, but you'll always have a limited number of personas at your disposal. At some point you also unlock the ability to fuse personas. This will let you experiment by taking two personas and merging them into a new, hopefully more powerful one. The newly created persona will be able to inherit some of the abilities from either of the two you used in the fusion. Additionally, it will gain more experience the higher the social link level you have with the character that represents the same type of arcana as the new persona being created. This is just another way that hanging out with your friends makes your character stronger. There's a trend these days for RPG games to generally stray from classic turn-based combat. There is also this conception that turn-based combat is inherently boring. Certainly it can be, but action games or shooters can be boring as well. I can look back on a great many RPG games that I loved that were turn-based and were far from boring. Persona 5 is no exception to that. I think the visual style of the game contributes highly to keeping the game entertaining. The slick animations, the stylized menus, and the catchy music all come together to give the game a very kinetic feel that oozes from every pore. You can tell just from the visuals that there is a heavy anime and manga influence to the designs. Previous Persona games, as well as other Atlus titles such as Catherine, stem from this influence. And in Persona 5, it's been perfected. The game is helmed by Atlus veterans such as the producer and director Katsura Hashino, music composer Shoji Meguro, and legendary character designer Shigenori Soejima, all of whom worked on previous Persona and Megami Tensei titles. And the art direction came from Masayoshi Suto, who worked on some other games from Atlus and is responsible for some of the gorgeous menu screens. When I first started the game, I found the menus to be intimidating. They were all over the place, and I had to really study them to look for the information I needed. But after a few minutes of playing, it really clicked. I also realized then that the battle menu is actually the same layout as the PlayStation controller. Heck, the victory screen in most games are usually just lists of your victory spoils. In Persona 5, the experience, gold, items, and level ups are presented on a stylized pathway to emphasize the forward movement of the team toward their goals. And all of this is paired up with astonishingly catchy music that builds up each situation to feel epic. With that pumping along, every support spell, baton pass, and backup attack from your teammates feels like an exciting moment in the battle.
A river in a dry land, the lessons in a lost head. When the hope of new beginnings burned our feet, now we needed a heartbeat for demon. Oasis in a siege land, remind us from here, creating new life, creating rivers in the desert.
This is, of course, how I felt when I played the game. And as a fan of the series and role-playing games in general, I'm far from unbiased. I grew up on Japanese RPGs like Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, and Breath of Fire. The genre has always had a bit of a niche appeal. If you like a game that slows down and lets you soak up the world and atmosphere it creates for the player, then you'll love this. There are little things that they didn't even need to include that really add to the experience for me. For example, when you learn how to make coffee, your caretaker will try it out. The game will then give you a little factoid about coffee beans.
Let me explain.
This is just like in the other Atlas game, Catherine, where upon finishing your alcohol at the bar, the barkeep will give you trivia about the type of drink you ordered.
I know this is sudden, but here's some trivia for you, as you seem to have finished your glass. The name Rum and Cola is actually a nickname. Do you know the real name of this drink? It's called the Cuba Libre. The rum called for in this drink represents Cuba. This is a cocktail which mixed the national specialties of Cuba and the United States as a celebration of Cuba's independence. Cuba Libre means free Cuba. It tastes differently when you know the history. And that was the cocktail trivia for tonight.
Empty already? Yo, Erica, I got an order.
It's these small things that come together to really make a game such as this unique and memorable. But if a game with a lot of reading does not appeal to you, then this is one from which to steer clear. If you don't care for games that center around narrative and character growth as the central player motivation, then you could easily find the hours of dialogue unappealing. Likewise, this is a long game. If you're the type of person that can only play for an hour at a time, or has to take long breaks between gaming sessions, you could find yourself getting lost as time goes on. For some people that can only game in bits and pieces, this may be a game that could take several months to complete. Another barrier people may run into is just how steeped in Japanese otaku culture it is. For some, the anime-style artwork will be a tip-off that this game is not for them. I feel like the quality of the story and the characters makes up for some of the things that can be considered off-putting. But everyone is different, and not everyone can look past specific things to find enjoyment. For instance, the idea that a victim of underage sexual harassment would have an alternate reality costume that is a form-fitting red latex costume with cleavage could be a problem for some potential players. Of course, one could justify that her true enlightenment comes from being unashamed and in control of her own sexuality, and this is her feeling empowered. Or you could argue that sexy girls sell anime games, and this design choice falls on the tone-deaf side of things. It's like how maid cafes are a real-life industry, but some people find them really icky and off-putting. Or some people may take issue to the fact that there are a couple of instances where flamboyantly homosexual male characters were used exclusively for a gag, where they aggressively hit on a heterosexual character that got freaked out by it. These things were minor enough for me to ignore and see the quality and love in the rest of the game. But some players will not consider these things minor. Their life experiences are different than my own, and I bring them up to help prepare those gamers for what to expect. Overall, this game is a truly fantastic JRPG, and I feel it's a must-play for fans of the genre. It took me 116 hours to beat this game, and if not for the need to move forward to continue making content for this channel, I would have already started a New Game Plus and would be shooting for that Platinum Trophy. I loved the story, the characters were great, the art is fantastic, the music is stuck in my head. In the whole 116 hours, I didn't encounter a single bug or glitch. If this was only possible through the numerous delays that we had to suffer to get it here, I'd say it was worth it. Even in a year where we're only 4 months in, and there's already been an onslaught of tremendous games released, I could say right now that come December 31st, this is probably going to be my personal game of the year. Oh, and one last thing, Makoto is best girl. Fight me.
So you know that